Good afternoon, everyone. We have had a splendid morning orienting ourselves and our new students into the program, and we had so much incredibly energetic and lively conversation. I think people are still overjoyed at face-to-face communication, but also just finally meeting the students who will be in your cohort. My name is Jane Fountain, again, for anyone who doesn't know, and I am so honored to be the director of the School of Public Policy and want to welcome you to this fall kickoff event. You have on your chairs our prospectus. What you actually have, we've just updated this prospectus over the summer, and we have our digital version, but not our print version yet. So you have a version that allows me to give a great shout out to the inaugural director of the school, who's not with us today, Professor Al Roberts. During the past 5 years, Al Roberts built up the school from its beginning, its establishment as a school in 2015, through hiring faculty, through building the one-year programs, the new undergraduate major, and much, much more. So a big shout out to him, and we are deeply grateful. We would not be where we are today without him. We have two fabulous keynote speakers, each of which embodies tremendous leadership and service, both in nonprofits, in civic life, and in an elected role. But first, we have welcomes from the two of the top dignitary on the campus. What is it? The OG. The OG is with us today, and looking in a much more relaxed state now that this is his last year. So I'm going to introduce our Chancellor and our Dean, and then you'll hear from them. Chancellor Subbaswamy is the 11th, or Swami. I think of Subbaswamy as Super Swami, just so that you know, is the 11th and current and dearly loved Chancellor of UMass Amherst. He's led the campus since 2012, so 10 years in a very, very tough job through a very tough period, COVID and other challenges. It's hard for me to imagine anyone else leading the campus at this point, although I have been here under other chancellors I can barely remember, but this is his last year. And during the past decade, he has relentlessly pursued academic excellence. He has promoted research and outreach. He has been a champion of diversity, of inclusion, and equity. He's made the campus one of the fastest rising top-tier public universities in the country. He's produced a transformation on the campus. Some of you may have been around when this chapel was not renovated. That's one project, the Commonwealth Honors College, the Integrative Learning Center, the Life Sciences Laboratories. We're waiting for the School of Public Policy building, but I know it will come, given these other examples. He has developed the UMass Flex program, which is online, which allows anyone in the world and lifelong learners to connect to our campus. He's made sustainability a campus priority. Of course, we feel that one of his greatest achievements has been his establishment of the School of Public Policy in 2015. He's been a great supporter and champion of the school and its mission, especially during a period of threats during COVID, threats to democracy, threats to diversity. So we are really honored to have you here, Chancellor. I'm going to introduce the Dean and then ask the Dean to speak first and then you. That's our game plan. We also have with us Dean Karl Rethemeyer, who became Dean of the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences last summer. His interviews during the national job search, which is a very big deal with a search firm, were during the height of COVID. We met with him outside. Everyone had masks. We didn't know if people could travel, but fortunately we got him here. He came to UMass after having served as Dean of the Rockefeller College, one of the most prestigious schools of public affairs at the University of Albany. During his nearly 20 years there, he directed their graduate programs in public policy, public administration. He chaired the Department of Public Administration and Policy, and he went on to serve as associate, interim, and then dean of the college. So he really knows schools and programs of public affairs. I also don't know how he did it, but he maintained a very high profile as one of the world's best scholars on the structure, management, and effects of social networks and social network methodology. And he was a pioneer in the focus on policy networks, which has been a very important area in public policy. At some later date, we look forward to having him in his role as a faculty member in the school. We won't twist your arm to try to teach courses or any of that for now, but we're very fortunate to have his leadership. So without further ado, we will hear from the Chancellor. Thank you, Chancellor.
Thanks very much, Jane, for those really very kind words. And indeed, you know, one of the wonderful things about this university is the quality of the faculty we have, and there is no one we need to look further than Jane Fountain, who's so Fountain, I should say, Fountain, who has been instrumental in so many different things that we have to do at the university. And she's not only a great, scientist scholar, but also she's a great citizen of the university. So we're really grateful for everything you do. And now, of course, this responsibility. Thank you for taking this on as well. So it's really wonderful to see all of you here as we begin the new academic year. It's always a time of renewal. It's a time of rejuvenation. This is what I'll miss. Think about it. A whole new set of 18 to X years, depending on what. And you feel really refreshed every year. It's sort of a rejuvenation, and that I'll miss. I'll probably just go to university campus just to get that kind of an air anyway, even if I have nothing to do with the university. I really want to extend a special warm welcome to our speakers, Senator Jo Comerford, a dear friend and a strong supporter of the university, and I want to thank her for the wonderful budget we received this year. She's a really great advocate. And, of course, Samantha Hamilton for all the things that she does on the public health front. We're really glad to have you here. In recent years, the School of Public Policy, like our university, has experienced unprecedented successes. So the school is very young, and already it has emerged as one of the strongest programs. We all, whether we like it or not, pay attention to U.S. News and World Report while completely decrying that kind of ranking. As long as we're doing well, it's fine. Since 2014, the school is now ranked in the top 25% of graduate public affairs programs in the United States. I think that's quite remarkable and shows you the trajectory that it's on. No pressure, Jane. As we, help you pursue the academic goals that you have for yourself, I'm speaking to the students now, you really have an exceptional opportunity with the kind of community you have here. The university, of course, ultimately, at its heart, is a place to pursue the truth. Now, if there are any postmodernists here, don't start lecturing me about capital T truth and lowercase t truth. I'm only a physicist. What do I know about those things? But really, ultimately, however you define truth, it's really about quest for truth, evidence-based reasoning, and so forth. And so in order for that to occur, we really need everyone to feel free, everyone to feel like they belong here, their voice belongs here. And as some of you may know, we conducted a climate survey last fall, where about 41% of our community participated. So it's a huge percentage of our student, faculty, staff participated. And there's good news and there's bad news, as you would expect with any big organization. The good news is that about 90% of those surveyed said that they had some level of belonging to the university. They felt like they belonged. Percentages varied depending on the group, but 90% said that. But when you then started looking at disaggregating it, our, for example, Black and African American students, about 25% said they felt no sense of belonging to this campus, for instance. So that's sobering. Likewise, if we looked at some other marginalized communities, for example, our transgender population, they uniformly said they don't feel like they belong here. And so we have a lot of work to do, and along those lines, we really have various programming that we have set up for this fall, starting kickoff on September 12th that week on belonging at UMass is sort of what we're calling that day, just to start having us think about the issues and how do we address something of that sort, which is not something, where an administrator or leader can just turn a knob and say, now everyone belongs, or now everyone feels like they belong. So this is really a community work. And again, as those of you who think about these issues more deeply than some others perhaps, we look forward to your ideas on how we can be a better campus, a more inclusive campus where everyone feels like they are heard, they belong, and that they can contribute their best and they can achieve their best. That's what we want to do. And, my own personal testimony here is that many of you have heard the story. When I was 20 years old, I got on a plane for the first time ever from Bengaluru, India, and never been on a plane until that time, and traveled 8,000 miles to come to Indiana University, Bloomington, didn't know a soul, and there weren't many souls on campus when I arrived either. And so I went into my room. They showed me, this is your room, and I didn't come out for 48 hours. I had no idea what to do, where to go, what to eat, any of those sorts of things. But then once I made it out, I was really embraced by the community around me, and I just had to let them. And that's really true anywhere and everywhere. So I certainly urge you to make use of every resource that's available at the university. Reach out to someone if you feel like you need some help, and that's what we're all here for. That's what your colleagues are here for, looking out for one another. And so mental health is a large issue that we're all facing. Lots of young people these days are under a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety and worse, and we certainly are gearing up to also make us a very health-conscious university. We're calling this health-promoting university, and you'll hear more about this as we move forward. So with all of that, I'm really excited for how far the School of Public Policy has come and where it's headed. And my two previous schools of public policy in my other institutions all had names. And so we'll have to look for somebody who will lend their name and their purse to this school. So if you're thinking of just your name alone, we're interested, but also your purse. So with that, thank you. Good luck with everything.
So, hello. Again, my name is Karl Rethemeyer. I'm very pleased to be the Dean of the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. And we're very excited to have all of you here as we start a more normal term, though one that's still occurring in the shadow of COVID. I think it goes completely without saying that there's been no precedent for what we have experienced in the last 30 months. We're working our way out of a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic, a war in Europe with global implications, and here in the U.S., with echoes in other countries as well, a renewed social movement that is demanding justice for people of color and all those who face discrimination and degradation because they are different, and a divisive discussion of what it means to have privacy, bodily autonomy, a right to life, and how life will be defined and the right enforced. The last two of these are contests over what it means to be a citizen and a person. The former is an effort to bend the curve of history back toward the ideals of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution, ideals that inspire but have never been achieved in our 246 years as a sovereign nation. And the latter engages with deep questions of humanity and the struggle between different moral and ethical standards, and the efforts to exercise raw power to impose one vision of who and what we are on everyone else. Both disputes are now being joined in state houses around the country as we debate the future of our democracy. Because simply put, through voting rights laws, redistricting, and abortion restrictions, we're debating whether we as a nation will continue our journey to be a true multi-ethnic, multiracial democracy, or whether we'll once again deny full and equal humanity and franchise to those who are not white. And we're also potentially going to impose state-approved definitions of privacy and autonomy in people who can become pregnant. All of you are here, I think, because in your very specific and very personal ways, you want to be part not just of the debate, but of the solutions. You want to explore ideas and gain knowledge and learn skills and make connections with others who want to make a difference. The faculty and staff are here to help you with that and to challenge you and to encourage you, to support you, and to provide you with the tools to be productive and effective researchers, activists, policymakers, public managers, professionals, and citizens, whether you decide to use your skills after you graduate in a nonprofit or in government or in other forms of advocacy. And we need you so very desperately. We need your drive, we need your determination, we need your optimism, and we need your vision of the future, because we strongly believe that these crises demand a public sector writ large, whether you work in government, a nonprofit, an advocacy organization, or a for-profit that realizes public purposes. Expert and effective pursuit of public good is surely central to resolving these central questions that we face, and we look forward to working with you. The School of Public Policy, under the director Jane Fountain, who you've just met, who also I'm very grateful, 20 years ago she signed my dissertation paperwork, has assembled a world-class faculty that draws on experts from across the university who share a deep connection in their research and teaching to public concerns. And we're particularly focused on social justice, technology, governance, and sustainability, and how all of those interconnect with each other. We have faculty with expertise and courses that will help you build your knowledge and skills across these areas. And I am particularly proud, as you heard, to be one of the newer members of the faculty, for I've learned a great deal from people like Professor Fountain and others throughout my career, and so will you. So please come see us. Each of us is devoted to making your journey rich and fruitful. I want to leave you with two challenges. First, I challenge you to use this time to learn how to rely less on your intuition, your instincts, your gut feeling, or conventional wisdom to make decisions. If intuition and checking your gut was always the way to get the right answer, then we don't need to be here. At base, we fundamentally believe that careful, systematic collection of data, paired with rigorous analysis and broad knowledge of theories that help to explain human behavior, will usually lead to better results for everyone. Our intuition has hardwired us to avoid becoming a bear's next meal, but it isn't always so good at helping us figure out problems that are complex and involve understanding the behavior of fickle human beings. We can be better servants of the common good when we check our intuitions, against carefully constructed models and theories of the world. We're here to teach you about those theories and models and the methods to find the data you need to apply them effectively. However, I also think it's the case that no policy or management problem can be solved by simply appealing to hard numbers and facts. Politics and persuasion are an essential element of the science and art of policymaking and management. Persuasion is all about effective communication. We want you to be analysts when you leave, but we also want you to be effective communicators, public servants who can listen, engage, and persuade. Public servants who think and analyze deeply and carefully, but also listen fully and communicate clearly, will be more effective. We hope you will leave here as precisely that kind of contributor to the public good. It's our job to help you gain those skills. So I wish you the best of luck during the term. Please stay safe. We're a mask-friendly campus, so please respect the choices of your peers and the staff and faculty. Get a booster when it's appropriate, and I hear there's a nice new one coming out next week. And stay home if you're feeling ill. We'll figure out how to help you make up the classes. And get involved and make your voice heard. And finally, don't be a stranger. We really look forward to learning about the things that you're studying, the things that you're interested in, and how we can help you engage more fully. So have a great afternoon, and go UMass!
Many thanks to the Chancellor and to our Dean. We are fortunate this afternoon as well to have two wonderful keynote speakers, as I said, and I'd like to introduce them now and invite them to the stage. Samantha Hamilton manages the Public Health Institute of Western Massachusetts' Live Well Springfield Coalition. She has more than 18 years of work in the region She currently leads the Age-Friendly City Initiative and the Climate Change and Health Equity Initiative. These coalition efforts engage policy and advocacy to create strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to improve health outcomes for marginalized communities in cities and towns directly impacted by climate change, and to dismantle systemic racism. Samantha worked closely with community organizations, city officials, and regional partners to designate Springfield the first community in the United States to have a triple designation of age-friendly city, dementia-friendly city, and an age-friendly hospital system. Quite an achievement. She another great multitasker. While I wasn't looking over the past few years, she was also the co-founder of a group called A Queen's Narrative. It's a personal enrichment program for women and girls of color. A Queen's Narrative uses narrative power and storytelling, building right on the Dean's remarks about communication, as methods to harness self-empowerment and self-awareness. She is the recipient of the 2021 Business West 40 Under 40 Award, and she is a published and best-selling author. So we are so pleased that you could make time for us today. Our other keynote speaker is Senator Jo Comerford, who was elected to the Massachusetts Senate to represent the Hampshire, Franklin, and Worcester District in 2018. She chairs the Joint Committee on Public Health, chairs the Joint Committee on COVID-19 and Emergency Preparedness and Management, and is the vice chair of the Joint Committee on Higher Education. And you heard how effective she was on that one committee. Prior to taking office, she led a crisis intervention outreach team through the Center for Human Development, focused on creating high-impact teams capable of addressing the myriad and often intersecting root causes of crisis. She then organized for 7 years as the director of the Western Massachusetts American Friends Service Committee. She then moved to direct the programs of the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts, where she worked to meet immediate demands of hunger and launched a pilot program to reduce food insecurity in the entire region. After the Food Bank, Jo led the National Priorities Project, NPP, a national budget and tax priorities research organization, as its executive director. That organization garnered a Nobel Peace Prize nomination in her final year there, and after NPP, she was a campaign director for Move On, focusing on a wide range of issues from gun safety to healthcare. We talked this morning about not knowing exactly what path your future may take, and I think you see in these two trajectories tremendous accomplishments and constellations of important work leading forward. So I'd like to invite you both to the stage, to these seats, and to ask Samantha Hamilton to take the podium and give us your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Good day, everyone. Thank you. First and foremost, thank you to the School of Public Policy for having me here. It's an honor to be invited to share my thoughts and ideas. It's also a pleasure to be on this stage once again with Senator Jo Comerford. I think it was 2 years ago. We were here talking about the future of public health, and it's a beautiful thing to come back together as a tag team to talk more about what we see on the horizon. I also want to acknowledge my colleagues in the back, our Executive Director, Jessica Collins, for being here, and our new Data to Policy Director, Andrea Friedman, who's leading our work in bringing this, all our efforts to the state legislative level. So I want to take a minute and reintroduce myself. I know my bio might sound a lot. I do a lot, and this is not even what I can put on a short resume, but before I was any of these things, or before I was able to accomplish these things, and again, I want to say it's not Samantha alone, it's definitely a team of great colleagues and coworkers, and community partners that made all the efforts that you hear about happen. First and foremost, I am a second-generation immigrant from the Caribbean islands. I'm a descendant, my family's a descendant from the Maroon tribe of mountains of west of Moortown, Jamaica. I'm a representation of my grandmother, my father, my mother, and my aunt, who sacrificed a lot for me to be here. And I once was this red-haired, blondish little girl that got on a plane with 5 of her siblings to come to America for a better life in the blizzard of 1993. So, yeah. I'm also a single mom, and I also once was a student just like yourself. So please know where I stand now and where you sit. It all is interchangeable. You can be in this podium, on this podium one day. And the difference between you and me right now is just time, only a matter of time. So Senator Jo's work is at the State House, while mine, as mentioned before, is rooted in the community, specifically Springfield. But just like a magical fist pump, when we do come together, forces are aligned and we can have a tremendous impact on our community. And I want us to both be mindful of our respective vantage point. Our perspective on how we see policy work matters. And your vantage point in the classroom matters as well. Your generation will be the one that inherits all our legislative agendas and push them forward. You'll be the ones that are the ones enforcing, reinforcing, and defending and protecting rights of others. And with saying this, we are currently doing that now in this time, in this era, protecting and reinforcing folks' rights. I also want to tell you why I love my job. I really love the opportunity I have to work with people that look like me, people that are dealing with the same issues I am, and people who care about any policy, systems, or environmental change, legislation, or project that impacts their well-being. And when I speak of their well-being, I'm talking about their respiratory health, their walkability, and their ability to access equitable health care. The lens where I do my work is centered around people most impacted by the issues, working within the community I love and being a part of the community I live in brings me joy. And with my selfish plug of telling you why I love my job, I want you to consider your reasonings on deciding to take on, I don't know, $10,000 to $20,000 more of student loan debt to pursue a career in public policy. I want you to think about your selfish why. I want you to think about your selfish why, because that is why you go to class every day. That's why you do the assignments, and that's why you take on internship opportunities that reaffirms, confirms, or challenge what you're learning in the classroom. Your selfish why is what will take you through the ups and down roller coaster of the next 2 to 4 years. And for the folks that have already endured those learning through the pandemic, I salute you for the last 2 to 3 years. And like my little son, my 7-year-old son would say, Mommy, this time was the worst. I would like you to think of your selfish reasons for going into the field, because the rewards take a long time to accomplish. I've been doing this work for 18 years, and even though I don't look a day over 25, the wins that we seek take a long time to accomplish. And in those trying and determining times, I selfishly enjoy the camaraderie of my community partner organization fighting alongside me despite the adversities, even though the fruits of our labor might not be seen in our lifetime. So imagine Braveheart. I know this is an old movie, but indulge me. The symbolism is very real. Imagine a group of people fighting for what they believe in the most despite the odds, because the fight for equity and racial justice and accountability is too important not to fight for. That's why my community, we fight for what we believe in despite the odds. So what does this work look like, and how does it apply to your passion for public service? The fundamental models of our organization, the Public Health Institute of Western Mass, our work is centered around community, bringing community and community partners together to understand and address the issues of systemic racism. We do this through data collection, research, evaluation, and convening. We do this by focusing on social determinants of health needs and collaborating with statewide, regional, and local partners. We do this with the understanding that folks' collective views and vantage point matters. And this work involves many voices, many perspectives, and many lived and professional experiences. I'm so excited when we connect our work, our assessment work, with the lived experiences of others. That's where the power is. That's where our ability to connect the dots and for others to see the real people behind the statistics, the real people behind the research. In this work, I've learned the importance of getting granular data analysis. Data is powerful, but I value the value of this information is not, if it's not brought to a localized level, is limited. I commend our research and evaluation team at the PHI for their work in pulling together regional data that analyzes the impact of COVID in Western Mass. We can all agree that COVID impacted the world, but COVID significantly impacted communities of color and low-income families and individuals significantly. To know how COVID showed up in Western Mass is important. To know who within our community needs support is essential, and to believe the future of public health would, and I believe the future of public health would need more funding and resource to understand the equitable impacts of communities at this micro level. And that's because even without the evidence of the data, we can already see the impacts. Even without the research, it's there. So it's important to align them together because that brings forward change. Another big learning for me in doing this work is the importance of integrating community voices and advocacy. We've heard me mention before that I love the people that I work with that are passionate about improving our community. And I could tell you, and even we could never pay them enough for being able to bring their vulnerability to the table. One of our projects that we worked on was around CORI, understanding the issues of CORI for older adults. So specifically, we were looking at the health impacts for older adults who are living with a CORI and how that affects their housing barriers. We decided to, in knowing that the stigma of CORI, CORI is a criminal background history, so someone has that on in their lifetime, it's harder for them to access housing and employment. So in knowing that we wanted to assess what is happening in someone's health and outcome, we also wanted to tell the story of what that individual actually goes through, what is really happening in the life of someone with a CORI record. So we decided to do the storytelling project to capture their lived experience. We interviewed a few older adults who shared issues of them losing their job, becoming homeless, struggled to find employment, as well as someone that actually struggled to support their dying mother because of the barriers of their COVID. But the power behind the interviews was not what I already assumed, I already know. The power behind the interviews was what the cameraman also learned, what the editing team also learned about someone living with this systemic condition. So we also felt humbled and honored for them to share this much about themselves. So in closing, I want us to again remember the vantage point in which we do our work. The work in public service is why I'm here. With the support and partnership of statewide legislators like Jo Comerford's efforts, we can become a powerhouse. I see the future of this work becoming more creative in integrating storytelling alongside micro-research and data collection, alongside multi-sector collaboration, alongside people most impacted by the issue. Our public service work must be done collectively, strategically, and selfishly. My selfish why is my family. My selfish why is my community. My selfish why is our future. Thank you.
Toledo. That was beautiful. Thank you. And thank you, Jane. Thank you, Dean. Thank you all. Thank you to the School of Public Policy for inviting me to speak with you today. I'm really honored. I wrote this down before I heard Samantha Hamilton, but I'm really honored to join Samantha Hamilton. Samantha, thank you for your powerful work. The Public Health Institute of Western Massachusetts, your work at Live Well Springfield and beyond was essential before COVID and remains a health equity beacon today. You get us all out of bed to do the right work. So friends, my team and I are closing in on the end of our second session in office. 4 years of what I think of as scrum, a rugby analogy to which I really have no entitlement. Arms locked, head down, lots of mud, and I'm going to come back to the mud at the end. Fighting to pass good policy, good and just policy for the people of the Commonwealth. For me, policy is a pretty simple idea. It's a blueprint for change. Someone's blueprint for change. It's thrilling, humbling work, and it takes every instinct, every skill I've learned over many years, I'm old, to do well. Passing policy is all about teamwork, relationships. It's also about winning, I think. And so in the next few minutes, I'm going to do a lightning round of how my team and I move the proverbial policy ball on behalf of our district, and I'm going to share 9 quick lessons. Number 1, sometimes ideas spark. Be ready. We think of government as churning slowly, and it does, but sometimes it flies. One of the first bills we filed was one to study the restart of passenger rail service along the Route 2 or Northern Tier corridor here in Western Mass. We thought it would be a long shot, but the transportation chairs were interested, the bill testimony was strong, and the path forward opened. Policymakers have to fan the sparks into flames, and you just don't know when you're going to need that fan, so have it ready. Number 2, no means not now. Now, there are too many examples to count where no was the first response to later successful policy ideas. In 2019, we filed a bill to develop a net zero building code to limit carbon pollution from buildings. Now, at the beginning of that legislative session, a net zero code seemed like an inconceivable idea to the powers that be on Beacon Hill. In fact, more than one person laughed at me, laughed at the audacity of that idea. Really like big belly laughs, actually. Fast forward about 18 months or so, and no one was laughing anymore. Stellar climate activists and researchers had pushed us to move the state to net zero by 2050. And that building code was central in the stop on the journey to get there. This brings me to number 3. Expertise matters. In my first session, I was all about net zero building. Now, really, I knew nothing about that before smart people told me about it and helped school me, right? In the second session, the one we're just about to finish, we've gone deeper into complex grid and solar policy, electric grid, solar policy, thanks to truly gifted researchers and advocates. Policymakers like me have to rely on trusted allies like you and others to help craft policy solutions that will actually work. I'm a generalist, but I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want the smartest people in the room to help lead the bills we file. So expertise matters. You know what else that matters? This is number 4, public input, because there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all policy. Policy can't be crafted in a vacuum. It needs razor-sharp expertise, and it needs to be seasoned by the very folks who will have to implement it or be affected by it. Here's a concrete example. Voting reform is really popular in our region. I'd like to think, and I'm sure I'm right, that many of us believe that expanding access to the ballot is a really powerful tool for democracy building. But in the original statewide bill up for consideration this session, we left Western Massachusetts behind in a lot of ways. For example, The policy as written included helpful provisions for counting early ballots submitted by electronic tabulators through those electronic tabulators, but did not include the wooden crank boxes used by many of our communities at home. So it was a relatively simple fix, but one that wouldn't absolutely have been seen or called for without constituents' calls to action. And I use that because it's incredibly concrete as an example of how simple it is to get policy wrong, but how simple it is to get it right if we welcome people in to talk to us about it. Number 5, people power matters. A group of formerly incarcerated women and their families have been organizing to support alternatives to jails and prisons. They have envisioned new ways to remake our criminal justice system and invest in communities that have been targeted and have endured the highest rates of policing and incarceration, underemployment, gentrification, environmental racism, the work that Samantha has been leading with so many great colleagues. Their uphill battle grew stronger and stronger as they built a coalition that included religious groups, civil rights organizations, community groups, and so many others. In the end, against all odds, in 1 year, these organizers passed, in the House and the Senate, a bill to put a 5-year moratorium on the construction of new prisons and jails in the Commonwealth. It was a superhuman feat. Now, I was proud to file that bill, and I'll be proud to work with them every single year that I am, privileged to share that space on Beacon Hill that I get to share. But it was the movement they created that won, and we were servants of that movement. Now, the governor, much to everyone's dismay, maybe not his own, vetoed that provision, so it's not law right now. But this is a story of how people power, wielded with passion and skill, like these organizers wielded it, had a victory, and they'll just keep on going. And we'll get this. We'll get this done. It wasn't done the first time, but it will be done next session. So sometimes we're not fully successful, and that's when we have to be ready for number 6, partial victories, which are still victories. With the incredible Rep. Mindy Dahm, I get to share the representation of UMass Amherst with Mindy, and partnerships with very smart subject matter experts, we filed something we call the Green and Healthy School Bill, part of which was recently signed into law within this session's larger climate bill. You'll notice I said part of which, because the full bill, as written, didn't make it through. The bill, as written, had 3 parts: get the data needed to understand the state of climate preparedness and public health protections in existing schools, use the data to formulate new standards, and then assemble a group of people to advise the state on how to make green and healthy schools a reality. We saw an opening and got the first 2 provisions into the climate bill. We'll come back for the 3rd provision this session. Now, could I have taken an all-or-nothing approach? You bet. But then I'd have nothing. Which brings me to number 7. Sometimes we get nothing. Setbacks are real. And it's not about having thick skin, just having thick skin. Policy work needs us to have internal organs sturdy and strong enough to withstand the body blows of defeat. You may have heard about the end of this year's formal session and the Economic Development Bond Bill that stalled out, the fate of which is still unknown. That omnibus bill had within it 3 bills that my team and I had led on, and millions of dollars for our district. It was really a thing of true beauty, a sort of a policy miracle. And my team and I couldn't do anything to save it from running aground. All we can do now is support excellent colleagues in continued negotiations, recognizing that the loss we feel as legislators, policymakers, is absolutely nothing compared to that felt by the people and communities who desperately need that money and the relief that these policies would bring. Number 8. It's really important for legislators, this is really important for legislators and advocates alike. It's not enough to pass a good bill. You have to see it through. Passing a piece of policy in the legislature, it feels really good. But there's absolutely no guarantee that A, the entity charged with implementation will actually take up the work or do it as prescribed, or B, that the policy itself will work as envisioned without any unintended consequences. I believe policymakers must continue to be accountable to the legislation they design as it moves forward on its journey and be ready to jump in again should help be warranted. And lastly, number 9, utilize the policy power in government at whatever level of government you're in. When the Supreme Court gutted Roe v. Wade, and amid the attacks on reproductive equity and gender-affirming care coast to coast, policymakers in Boston came forward to create a line of defense for the people of Massachusetts. Government can and should work in the best interest of all. Policy can and should work in the best interest of all. We can move policy like lightning when lives are on the line. It's all about the will of the people inside of government and in the streets, both hand in hand. I'll close with a passage from Marge Piercy's poem, To Be of Use, and here's where the mud comes in. This is what Marge Piercy wrote, I have it over my desk. I love the people who harness themselves like an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo and with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what it has to be done again and again. And here, Samantha, she was speaking to you. The work of the world is as common as mud. Botched, it smears, the hand crumbles to dust, but the thing worth doing well has shape that satisfies, and clean and evident. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. You are the people, and Samantha, that Marge Piercy is writing about. You're looking in this school for real work. You'll pull policy forward in the mud and the muck with massive patience, and you'll do it well. And I know your work and the work of this program will have shape, and it will transform communities, and it will change lives. So thanks for taking it up.
Thank you both so much. I don't know about you, but I am totally pumped and inspired and ready to go. You've been listening for a while. We have time for some questions. So we have students, we have staff, we have faculty, we have people from the community. I think Marcy will bring this under some rational control. My view is if you have a question, just come to the center and ask your question. I don't know if we're going to have a line. I don't know how many we'll have. We'll see what we can do in our remaining time. And if you don't have questions, I have plenty. So wait, let me start with one. And if something comes to mind, really don't be shy at all. And I guess you could just put up your hand. We could bring you a microphone. I think one question that comes up, and there are so many that you could take on, is the road ahead. Where do you see your organization, your sector, your big areas going? What do you see as the next big developments or changes on the horizon? You've already talked about some of them, but if each of you would amplify on that, and what do you think that these students in particular should be aware of if they're thinking about work like yours or in your spaces? And either of you, there's no order here.
It's on. So hello again. I did have an opportunity to talk to our Executive Director, Jessica Collins, on the work of the Public Health Institute of Western Mass. And one of the big charge that the organization had, I think about 2 years ago, was developing a policy arm. And the Public Health Institute have done research in understanding the lived social determinant needs of others. We've quantified information, we've put statistics together, and we come to a place of, wow, this is happening. Oh my God, there's a lot happening in our community. But then the question is, where does the action come from? And we do believe in a policy systems and environmental change approach, and some of our grants lead with that in mind, or this upstream model, like, direct service is essential. We need that for our community. We can address systems change through interventions and intermediate programs. But at the highest level, it's policy advocacy and policy legislation. So we're happy to have on board our Director of Data to Policy Action, Andrea Friedman, who's in the back, can give a wave, who's leading our work to connecting my coalition work, the work that I do with community partners around environmental justice, our efforts around community choice energy, and a race and health equity impact assessment requirement for the city of Springfield, to local legislators and state officials that could, again, could listen to what we're asking for and kind of be maybe the champion for our legislative agenda. So the organization is really keen in building that out, and by hiring and putting someone in that position, it makes it really strong and firm. The other piece that our executive director shared with me was the importance of connecting with private sectors. We are a city that has a lot of development happening, and sometimes nobody wants to know the public health impacts of developing a casino. Like, why would you want to know that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? So we've done impact assessment for the casino development to know that it's coming. The casino is going to be built. But ask ourselves, who is that going to disproportionately impact? Who's going to be displaced in that situation? Up on the horizon or now established is this cannabis environment of business, small business owners wanting to get into the business, big developers coming in and planting themselves in the community. But what are the health and equity impacts of cannabis industry, and who is that going to impact, and what perceptions are we giving out to our communities? So those are kind of two of the things that we're trying to understand, is how to kind of be invited to the table with private developers before they start building and thinking about what they're putting in place, and how does this either advance the community or help it, or what are some mitigating impacts that we need to consider and put in place so that it doesn't disproportionately impact communities of color and other minority groups.
Incredible. Think client-based projects, capstones, volunteer opportunities.
Absolutely. That's really compelling. So when you asked that question, I thought about the experience of the legislature during the COVID pandemic. Imagine 200 legislators, and COVID is hitting our shores, and we are unprepared as a state. And that's one thing, and that's a lot to do, right, with preparedness and first responders and the funding of the kind of public health sector that we need. But really what I want to talk about, and really where I hope the legislature goes, is really not looking away from the lesson that COVID taught us. You talked about this, Samantha. The disproportionate impact of COVID was felt by communities of color, by immigrant communities, by poor communities. People of color and poor people got sick more, they got sicker more, they went to the hospital more, and they died more. And then from there, and this is all in the data, and from there, the downstream effect of that kind of havoc, the disproportional, inequitable havoc, it goes in every way you can imagine, from employment to transportation to public education to wealth accumulation. Every aspect of a person's life was inequitably harmed in Massachusetts during the pandemic. And so I believe that going forward, and I believe a lot of my colleagues are here as well, we can't look away from that chasm. We can't, everything was just ripped back, and of course, people experiencing these inequities for their lives for generations knew that was there, knew the chasm of inequity was there. But everyone, the general public, was forced to see it, to grapple with it, to own it, to be accountable for it, to tell the truth about it. And I believe that policy and the State House has to focus just there. Not only in the logistics about how do we become more equitably tuned to first responders and public health and the health sector, but all of the root causes of inequities that we have looked away from for too long in the Commonwealth. And so that's where I hope we focus. Again, there's been a lot of work during the pandemic on there, but not nearly enough.
Thank you. Thank you both. Do we have any questions? We have gifts for you. They're small, they're modest, but we want to be sure we give them to you as a very small thanks for all you've done for us today. So Marcy, please, you do the honors. And we want to invite you back every few years. We want to invite you back during the year, and we would just want to thank you so much for honoring us with your presence and your wisdom and for all the work that you do. So thank you so much. And we are adjourned. And if you want to try to get photos, I will leave it all to you. Thank you, everyone.